So last week, myself and Kay and Hannah went to see my coaches, I guess, if you like. Well, the guys who do my marketing, but they also do a bit of keep me on the straight and narrow, shall we say, as well, which is good. It's good to have people that you can kind of share ideas with and bounce them off. And I feel a bit stupid advocating the kind of power of coaching, if you like, if you're not
doing it yourself.
Yeah, and to be honest, any time in my life I haven't had a coach, I feel a bit weird. You know, I've had coaches in my life since I was about 7 or 8, so being without one. Maybe it's become a crutch, I don't know, there's a topic for another day, but no, I like that principle. But yeah, what I thought was quite interesting is that we went to their space, we had a conversation that was 4 or 5 hours long and really, really productive. It didn't go completely in the direction that I'd wanted it to go. I wanted to look much longer term and strategic, but we ended up talking around quite a lot of detail, and you know how much I love detail. But it meant we came away with really clear and distinct plans as to what we could do over the next 3 to 6 months. And then it occurred to me that in the last month, I think I've spent 4, maybe 5 days with clients' teams running similar exercises, and in all cases, bar one, they have come out of the business environment and gone to a hotel room or a business complex, whatever. One case, a golf club, always nice, to have that conversation. And we ran one last week, and I asked for feedback at the end, not necessarily directed at me, but about the whole thing. And the thing that everybody said as feedback was, it would have been really good if we could have done this outside of the office.
Right.
And it just got me thinking about, and I have very strong views on this, but I'll obviously let you pitch in, how much you think environment dictates performance.
Well, I think I'm probably along the same lines as you, in the sense that I think it matters a lot, because I think that even down to, when you're at home, messy home, messy mind type thing applies to me. It doesn't apply to everybody, and I think some creatives would argue that it's all about free thinking and letting their mind drift and all that kind of stuff. But
they're still creating an environment.
But they're creating an environment that works for them.
Yes.
And that's all that matters. It doesn't, it's not that everyone has to be tidy or everyone has to work in a certain office environment. It's about finding the environment that best utilises your skills and makes you as productive as you can be.
So it's interesting you said creative there, or creatives, because I think that's the bit that I think is really, really important. And there's two sides to this, or maybe more than two. But one, I think taking yourself out of your everyday space and putting yourself somewhere different enables creativity. I know I'm at my most creative when I'm outside. So if I want to come up with new ideas, for me it's always get outside, go for a walk. And I know Hannah and you in the past have got quite annoyed with me when I've come back from holiday because I've been down by a beach or sitting on a sound lounger and I've come back with loads of new ideas and you're like, oh no, Ash is back from holiday. But that environment is key to just allowing me to free think, and I think that's important. And I think the other thing is that it's really, really difficult to plan when you're in the same space all the time. I think it physically creates a sort of I'm inside the bubble situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
like you're inside the hamster wheel.
Yeah, you're just bogged down with the everyday, I think.
Yeah. So in order to plan effectively, I believe it's better to take yourself out of your everyday patterns, out of your everyday habits, out of your everyday environment, and put yourself somewhere removed from the business. So this is a great example, isn't it? We used to record the podcasts
in your office.
In my office, and we'd spend the first hour and a half talking about work stuff.
Yeah.
Because I'd have emails open and, you know...
The website.
Oh, have you seen this? I've done that, and share all this sort of stuff. Whereas actually we come here and we just record the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's nothing else to do.
Yeah.
So it's really focused.
Well, yeah, and then that's part of it, isn't it? It's about focusing your mind on the thing that you're wanting to achieve and not allowing yourself to get distracted. So you're changing the environment in order to ensure that the result that you want, which is achieving a piece of work, whether that's podcast or planning or whatever, has the best chance of happening because you're not allowing yourself to get distracted with other things.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've heard don't know how you hear posts, maybe listen on TikTok. I've read a few posts recently about people booking themselves into hotels for 2, 3, 4 days at a time. And I think I saw something a couple of weeks ago about somebody who'd done 3 nights, maybe, and he was reporting back on his lessons learned from 3 nights in a hotel room on his own. I don't know if he stayed in the hotel room or used the business facilities in the hotel room, but just to be out of the business.
But do you think some of that is because if you're spending money on a hotel room, you want to actually have something to show for it at the end of it? So there's a bit more of a kick to actually make sure that you use your time productively to achieve the goal that you've set yourself, rather than allowing yourself, if you're just in your normal environment, then there's no driver of, oh, this is costing me money. It is costing you money, but it's hidden in this. It is different from paying for a hotel room. That's a direct cost that you have to actually pay the bill from. You have to put it on your credit card or hand over the cash. So you feel that, and therefore it's a bit more painful, and therefore you want to feel like you've had a productive use of that money that you've just spent. Yeah,
I think you'd feel pretty, not stupid is a bit strong, but you'd be irritated with yourself if you'd spent 400, 500, 600 quid on a nice hotel for 2 or 3 nights. Maybe hired out one of the office rooms, and then they probably charged you extra for projector and the flip chart, whatever, and £1 per pen. Some are like that, aren't they? But if you came away and just hadn't achieved anything.
Well, I mean, we could come here and use the space to work on your website or your business, or talk about stuff that's going on in your business, but it wouldn't achieve the goal that you want to achieve.
Correct. Getting
the podcasts done.
So you when we were off air, you talked about we were starting to chat about planning. So do you think there's a connection between being able to plan effectively, or your thoughts on planning that you had, and where you do it?
I think you have to know yourself, and where's good for me, it's not necessarily good for you.
Yeah.
And so you have to really know what environment is going to be the most productive and the right type of environment for whatever it is that you want to achieve. So for me, I like when I'm coming back to creative thought and planning out, new products or new services, or whatever, I like a really tidy environment, because that means that my brain isn't distracted from going, oh, that needs tidying up over there, or that's messy, or almost too much information. It almost clears my mind so that it gives me space to think. But I know that there are other people who like the inspiration of lots of things around them, and subconsciously that sparks their thought process, and their ideas and their planning comes from that. So I think you have to really know what works for you as a starting point. And I think then you have to know, when I spend this time, what do I want to achieve by the end of it?
What am I going to get out of it?
You've got to plan your planning time. Because otherwise, and this is, I think, one of your favourite quotes, and we were talking about favourite quotes off air as well, but how do you know, if you don't know where you're going to, how do you know when you've got there? And if you don't know what you want to achieve out of your planning session or your meeting time, then how do you know if it's a successful meeting or a successful planning session? So it's just a session.
So let's talk about planning for a moment, because We started talking about the environment. Okay, that's fine. And I do think that's important. Don't want to dismiss that. But talk to me about, how do you plan?
Well, I think there's different types of planning as well. So some planning is chronological in the sense of what do I want to achieve in 1 month, 6 months, 12 months, whatever. And in my project planning brain, I see those as milestones.
Okay.
In my Gantt chart. If you imagine a visual Gantt chart.
Yeah. Do you actually see that then in your head?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I see these markers.
I just see there.
And then, but that's why I'm saying you have to know what works for you and how your brain gets the most out of that structure, that time. Because what works for me is not going to be what works for you, and vice versa. You know, but in my brain, I almost see a Gantt chart and I put my milestones in as markers and literally see those, and then I fill the gaps in around that. So there might, I don't know, like going back to my ice skating business, maybe I wanted to launch 2 new products that year. Okay, so how I have to understand a bit around, well, what's needed to launch that? How long are those things going to take to be able to determine a date and put a marker in of what launch date it is? And then there's an element of kind of working forwards and backwards in terms of planning of, well, what's needed? So maybe I need designs. Who's going to do the designs? Do I need to spend some time looking for inspiration for the designer to then pull a unique garment out of that? But then also things like, which supplier am I going to use? Do I need to find a new supplier? What are their lead times like? What fabric would I use? All of those things then start to slot into my Gantt chart in my mind. And then at that point, I usually start putting it on paper or on the computer, because there's too many bits of information and there's too many linkages to be able to hold that in your brain. But I'll literally take each task or goal that I want to achieve and forwards and backwards plan that until I've got it solid in my chart.
And do you start taking action whilst the planning is still going on, or once it's all done and you're happy with it? And how do you know when you're happy with it?
Oh, lots of questions there. So I think historically I have started taking action before I finish planning. It's something that I am trying, or have historically tried more recently, to stop myself doing, and to not necessarily have every T crossed and every I dotted, but have a much more concrete written down plan of what the process is and what am I going to achieve before I start going off and doing things. Because otherwise, for me, I get excited because I'm inspired by that goal and I start doing, but I haven't stopped to think about all the things that are involved in that and who I might need input from and how that fits in with other things. And so what I was doing was ending up getting excited about a project and kind of, you do a lot of work when you're first inspired and excited, and then it gets a bit sticky and a bit boring and it's hard. And the tendency is, when I didn't have it all planned out, is that I drop it because I get stuck. And I don't know what the next thing is, or I don't know what other things I could work on around that to move it forward.
So how does that work when somebody is asking for a friend?
Okay.
I am gently asking for a friend. How does that work when somebody will use, I'm going to say, open brackets over close brackets planning, so over planning, as a method of not actually taking action? And you and I both know exactly who I'm talking about here.
Yeah, so I have come across that with clients, and this is, I think, when it is so important that you have spent time getting to know yourself and your weaknesses and your strengths, because you need to be able to recognise that is something that you have a tendency to do. And it's not right or wrong, it just is. In the same way that we were just talking about, things don't happen to you, they just happen, right? We all have personality traits, and all personality traits are valid. and they're not right or wrong, they just are. Because if we were all clones of each other, life would be really boring, and lots of things wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
If we were all starters but not finishers, nothing would ever get finished, right? So I think for me, I would say you have to be self-aware enough to know that that's a tendency that you might have, is to overplan in order to procrastinate against actually taking action. I think once you know that about yourself, then you can plan how you manage that. I was going to say avoid, but actually avoidance isn't the goal.
No.
Working out how you deal with it is the goal.
Acceptance and responsibility.
Yeah. So if you know that you overplan, then bringing in somebody who can move you past the planning and actually start taking action is really valid. And the most classic of these is you have some people who are starters, ideas, inspirers, visionaries, and they're not finishers, and that's okay. And then you have other people who are not visionary at all, but can take that idea and make it happen.
Yeah. And having a balance of both.
Having a balance of both is really important, but it's
very
rare.
You get somebody that's both.
Exactly what I was just going to say.
Yeah.
So knowing where you fit in that, and understanding what your strengths and weaknesses are, and filling the gaps with other people, or not necessarily people, but things that help you. Because it could be an app, it could be a planning tool, it could be lots of things. Can help you manage that, but you've got to know that that's what you do.
Interesting.
That's what I think.
Yeah, and I think it's valid. I know it's valid. We've both come across lots of people who are either one or both of those situations, and I think it can change.
Yeah.
I've gone from being somebody who just had to plan everything, and because I planned everything and I felt confident in those plans, it allowed me to execute with confidence, with authority, I suppose. And then I guess went through a stage where maybe it was the people around me that I lost confidence in the implementation element of it, so I just spent my time dreaming. And now I'm consciously dreaming because I've got people around me who will take that stuff and make it happen, which for me is the best place to be, because I procrastinate not because I don't want to do stuff, but I procrastinate because I just come up with more ideas. And actually having people around you to say, look, you plan this is your business, this is your goal, so stop coming up with new stuff, or put them in the ideas fridge and let's focus on this for now. Because I get bored. Get bored really easily. It's really hard work turning up every week and recording these, because I'm just like, oh. But then we get here and we have great conversations and I really enjoy it.
But not just that, because you've recognised it in yourself, that if it's just you on your own, you won't do it.
Which is why I make the date with you.
Exactly.
And it makes me come.
Exactly.
And it's the same
And
thing.
Also you choose to come away from your business.
Exactly. Coming back to the
to
environment.
create an environment that manages some of the things that you will do. So
this environment is designed to do one thing and one thing only.
Yeah. But what you're doing is you're putting in measures to overcome that tendency that you have.
Yeah.
Whether that's procrastination or over planning or all of those things. Like I said, it's not right or wrong, it's just knowing that that's what you do, and understanding that when you do that, it stops you from achieving the goal that you want to achieve. You've spent some time thinking and talking to Kay and me, Hannah, whoever, about what you can do to make sure that you don't allow yourself to go too far down that road.
Yeah. So, interesting. As always, let us know what you think. I know what you think, Shirley. But if you're listening, let us know what you think, your thoughts on planning. How do you plan?
Where do you go?
Where do you go? That's the big one. Do you do your planning in-house? Kay's got organising their team's away day, October I think it is, and that's quite interesting. You know, what speakers are they going to get in? They've got a theme, putting it all together. But it is not in the business. It is a way. It's, you know, and there's resistance already. Oh, can I take a day out from the business? I'm so busy. I've got lots of stuff to do. But they do know that a well-run day like that is going to be a catalyst for better work and better collaboration for the business moving forwards. And I think that's a really healthy thing to understand and make happen in your business.
I think it's healthy for people as well. Like if you're just nose to the grindstone, constantly just churning out work, at some point you'll get burnt out. Taking that day away to just step back a bit, breathe, however frustrating it feels at the time, actually re-energizes you, and when you go back to the office and get back to the grindstone, you're actually more productive.
Yeah, I agree. Totally.